I regularly get comments on my videos of people who watch the marriage videos and say, well, my spouse was abusive and my spouse drank and he did all these things with women, or my wife did this and they were a horrible person, or they had all these psychotic, whatever, they flew into a rage. And I will respond to all of you, especially if you're watching and you had to deal with some of that. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. The person who vowed to love you until death do you part should be the last person that hurts you. The last person. So it hurts even more when the person who's supposed to love you hurts you, hits you, or hates you. But the reason I'm bringing this up is to say, in response, the same thing I say over and over and over again in those comments. The quality of your marriage has nothing to do with whether or not that marriage is valid. Let me say that again. The quality of your marriage, whether it was the best, happiest relationship in the world, or whether it was the most miserable, none of that has anything to do with whether or not your marriage is valid. The only things that Jesus told his apostles, passed down, has in the church, in the Bible, two things. Did you freely consent? Basically, I said, yes, I did say I do. Did the other person freely consent? Basically, no gun was to their head. Or, well, and, not or, and were there any impediments, such as, were they free to marry? Were they already in a marriage? Or were they 50-year-old Muslim trying to marry a 9-year-old girl and she doesn't have the ability to consent? She's not at the age of consent yet. So that would not be considered valid because of the fact that it wasn't one of those two criterion were not there on the day they got married. But young lady watching, young man, person, please, I am just the messenger. I'm just the messenger. And I will continue to tell you truth as Christ taught it. Your spouse's adultery doesn't invalidate your marriage. There is what many Protestants consider the adultery clause in Matthew, which is not an adultery clause. In all the Gospels, Jesus says, anyone who divorces his wife and forces her to marry another and commits adultery. Period. And only in that one Gospel in Matthew does he say, and the original interpretations were, unless that marriage was illicit, meaning the marriage was never contracted in the first place. One of those examples I just gave you, right? They didn't freely consent, or they weren't legally allowed to marry. Back in Bible times, it was referring because there were incestuous relationships. A son would marry his father's wife after his father died. That's not allowed. And so if that happened, what Jesus was referring to, and what the Protestants call this adultery clause, were examples like that. No, that was illicit. That wasn't even a marriage. No connection, no marriage took place in heaven because it wasn't allowed by God. And if adultery were an out clause for marriage, King Henry VIII would not have needed to go to the church and ask for an annulment. He knew he was validly married. He knew that even though he had had a million affairs, that did not unmarry him. The whole church, for all of church history, for the first 1,500 years, knew that you were married as long as those first two things were in place. No impediments, there were no obstacles, and you freely consented. So nothing that takes place after your wedding day can invalidate your marriage. No infidelity. You could be married to what everyone says is a narcissist. Of course, everyone thinks their spouse is a narcissist these days when they're leaving. But that doesn't invalidate your marriage. The abuse, the horrible, horrible abuse does not invalidate your marriage. It does not unmarry you. And by the way, before I get more comments, get out of the house. Get safe. You can never say that Christine Bacon said that you should stay, because I've had those comments too where people go, so you say that I should have stayed and gotten abused? Nope. Nope. Neither does Jesus. Nope. And that's not what the church says, not what the Bible says. It says get out and get safe. But you're still married. You just have to carry that cross. We, especially as Westerners, but we in this culture, in this new millennium, no matter where you are around the world, we have this aversion to suffering. And we have this idea that if we suffer, that invalidates the things that we said and did. That is nowhere in the Bible. Nowhere. And as I've said before, just the opposite. You guys, we're not pagans. We are Christians. What does Jesus say to Christians? Pick up your cross. Deny yourself. Pick up that cross. Follow me. Pick up that cross of abuse and get out of that marriage. Get out of that house. But acknowledge that you have to carry the cross of being married to someone that you can't live with. You're married to a narcissist who only thinks about him or herself and not you. Jesus says, I love you and I'm sorry. But deny yourself, your needs, your desires, and pick up that cross and follow me. Because you know what? When he says, follow me, he didn't just go down the happy, fluffy roads. He went down Gethsemane. That's what he's saying to you. Follow me down the Via Dolorosa. He didn't put down his cross. He didn't run from you when you were sinning against him. He didn't run from me when I was sinning against him. He didn't say, Christine sinned against me. No longer do I have to love her. Guys, I don't know what more I can say to tell you. Now, what Christine Bacon says, you shouldn't care what Christine Bacon says, what God says, what the Bible says, what the church says, what Jesus taught. Please get better at looking at yourself clearly, looking at the crosses you have to carry, and embracing your cross, knowing that when you die and go to heaven, you're going to be elevated higher because of having carried that cross till the day you die than those who put their cross down and may not even make it to heaven. Don't run from your suffering, specifically in marriage. No, God never said you deserve to be happy. He said, pick up your cross, follow me. Deny yourself, deny your desire to be happy. I get it. I filed for divorce, don't forget. I was miserable. And I'm grateful that I didn't, because here we are decades later, very happy. Because I denied myself and I picked up my cross and I followed him. For those good spouses out there that I know, your spouse has left you, but you're still standing on your vows. God bless you for denying yourself, picking up your cross, and following him. For those of you who have been abused, I'm so sorry. You've gotten out, you've gotten safe. If you haven't, make sure you do so. You should never fear for your life. Now, if it's just what people say, verbal abuse, which is a whole nother video, if you're just hearing mean words, thank you for continuing to deny yourself, picking up your cross, and following him. I'll do other videos on what our kids should and shouldn't see, but I do want to remind you before I tune this one out. It's not always the good that our children see that gets them to heaven. Sometimes it's the bad that they see that causes them to go, I want to do just the opposite. So sometimes when we hide them, protect them from seeing some of the ugly in the world, sometimes it has the opposite effect. like it did on my book, The Super Couple, where 100% of the couples did not have parents with happy marriages. But 100% of them said, I learned how to be a super couple because of what I saw and I didn't want. So when you come to me and say, my kids shouldn't have to see this, no, they shouldn't have to see that. But it doesn't mean you should run off and sin by divorcing your spouse, by putting down your cross, by going after happiness instead of the cross. Your kids, God will take care of them. Just do what Jesus asked you to do and trust him. So to sum this up again, what I said at the beginning is nothing that happens after your wedding day invalidates your marriage. Nothing. It's only what happens before and the day of your marriage that determines if your marriage is valid or not. Let the arrows fly. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. And before I say thanks for watching another Bacon Bit, to those of you who wish to support this channel, and to those of you who already did, thank you. But I would love for the Lord to grow my channel, and I need your help. Go to buymeacoffee.com, and the link is right here in the show notes, and help support this channel. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching this informational Bacon Bit, and as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.